What's up, y'all? It's me, PK. Today I'm going to be teaching y'all how to make digichord melodies, just showing you my thought process and kind of walking y'all through what I do to make them. So let's get into things. I usually start by opening a serum patch, and today I'm going to be working with this bank that me and Proxen created. It's called the C3 Soldier Serum Bank. It's going to be coming out in a couple weeks. It's free. And so normally what I do is I just try to pick a pretty catchy lead or whatever, and then mess around in the piano roll. So one tip I got for you guys is to pick really good bass notes. One of my favorite chord progressions is this one. So if I'm gonna be working in C minor, and it goes C, and then G sharp, and then A sharp. And so if you have this, you just lay down pretty catchy bass notes. You can pretty much write whatever on top of it, and it'll sound pretty solid. So so that's a start. And then the next thing I do is kind of start building on top of that. So for the super happy melodies I make, I kind of like to stick in the pentatonic scale. So since I'm in C minor, I'll be sticking with the notes D sharp, F, G, and A sharp, and that kind of makes it sound really happy because it takes out these super tense notes of D and G sharp. So you can throw them in there to create some mix up, but for the most part I try to kind of hover around these notes to make the kind of super happy melodies. So I'm gonna start laying out just a catchy pattern. One thing I like to do is pitch the bass notes down a little bit so it gives a kind of contrast between the bass and the top notes. It makes it sound pretty cool. Another thing I like to do is add these little grace notes and slides. So in Serum, if you turn on the mono and legato on your leads, then you can make these really cool slides, and I think that kind of helps add some depth to the melody. It sounds pretty cool. It sounds like slidey, stuff like that. And then another thing I like to do is kind of change the length of some notes to create a little stutter effect. It makes it a little bit more unpredictable and bouncy. So this is kind of the basic melody, and then now that I have that, I can go from there and kind of add some variations throughout each bar. So that's pretty much the base layer of the melody. And now it sounds pretty cool, but it's kind of dry. So we got to add some effects and layers. So what I like to do is typically layer it with like a pluck or something super repetitive. So another one of my go-to VSTs is Spire. I'll just use that. Find like a pluck and then layer with the lead. So normally I like to remove all the reverb and stuff from my like plucks and leads while I like cook them up originally, and then put it back in post processing. That's just kind of like a personal taste thing, but I kind of like the dry sounding, super plucky melodies. I think they sound cool. And with these plucks, I don't really like the slide notes as much, so I take them out and then can quantize the whole thing. I kind of like to make my plucks a little bit busier as well. So I'll add in like some extra notes to give it a little bit more bounce. So I'll kind of use that as like a background and make it a little more repetitive, and altogether it sounds like this. Another thing I like to do is add like a really fat bass, and this is kind of cool whenever you add drums. You can kind of use this bass to like switch in and out with your 808 and give like a pretty cool effect. So one of my favorites is like a kind of fat saw bass. It's a Spire default preset. Another thing I'm going to do is take out the last note and do a call and response with the like Ken Carson classic square bass. I think that sounds really cool in these kind of like fast-paced melodies. That's kind of what I think of as like a Starboy or Out of Town melody, but like sped up to like 175. I think it sounds really cool. next, just to add some depth, I'm going to add a vocal chop. And I usually keep the vocal chops pretty repetitive and then layer them. And then I'm just going to add one layer because this vocal chop as kind of like a top line melody kind of fills up, you know, the first bar of space in terms of a top line. But this space right here is kind of empty. And so the way I see it, you know, you can kind of have a lead that responds. It creates like a call and response effect. And for this part, I kind of try to make the top line follow the rhythm of like our main melody. See, there's like how we have this step down and then this kind of long note. Kind of trying to follow that pattern right here. And because those two patterns kind of like line up, it kind of gives unity to the loop, which makes it sound pretty cool. So that sounds pretty complete. It's not super busy, but definitely complete enough to be a full loop. So now just process the loop. So I really like to add like chorus and reverb and stuff and also play with the stereo. So since we have this main lead, I kind of want to keep that in the center. And then I'll have the other melodies and leads and stuff kind of be, you know, out there, farther out, filling out the space that's not in the center of the listener's speakers, I guess. So for this pluck, I'm going to kind of make it a little bit spacier and add some reverb and stuff just so that it doesn't clash with the lead and kind of like supports it in the background. I'm also going to add some gross beat. I love the gross beat tape stop effect. It's pretty crucial for any of the beats I make. So it's something I enjoy. And I also like sidechain as well. Kind of gives this like pulsating effect. Touch the basses too much. I just kind of let them, you know, do their thing. They don't really need much processing. And then for the top line melodies, I'll kind of make them a little bit more spacey, add some reverb and chorus. And for the vocal chops, I like to make them super wide in the stereo, and then also EQ them a little bit. Then for my top lines, I kind of like to make them a little bit lower in volume, kind of leave the listener wanting more. I don't know. I think that's a kind of a cool effect. I noticed that in songs I like, they'll have elements that come and go and I want to hear more of, so I'll keep listening to the song. And so I kind of like to do that in my loops as well. And then finally, this is optional, but I don't really like the pitch of this melody as much, so I'm just going to transpose the entire thing up a couple semitones and see how it sounds, kind of play with the pitch. And so I like that pitch, so I'm now going to take the loop and stem it out, and I guess I'll play the final thing, arrange it a little bit. But that's pretty much everything. So usually I don't arrange my loops too much, and whenever I'm like sending them out to people, I try to keep the most interesting part of the loop at the beginning, because when other producers are listening to your loops, you want to catch their attention, because they usually listen for like 2 seconds, and if they don't like it, then they'll click away. But just to kind of show you guys what this would look like in a beat, here's the loop arranged. So that's the loop. Hope you guys learned something, and thanks for tuning in. Peace.